The words hit the mahogany table like a slap across the face. "You're out, Aubrey. Completely out of the 77 million. Drew's voice was pure venom as he leaned forward, his eyes blazing with triumph. "Did you really think some rich old man would leave his fortune to the maid? You're nothing but hired help, and everyone in this room knows it." I sat there, 72 years old, watching my own son-in-law tear me apart in front of a room full of lawyers and family members. My daughter Brooklyn wouldn't even look at me. The grandchildren I'd helped raise were staring at their phones. And Drew was practically vibrating with satisfaction. "Drew," I said quietly, my voice steady as a rock, "you might want to sit down for this." "I'm fine right here," he snapped, slamming his hand on the table so hard the water glasses jumped. "Let's just get this charade over with so we can discuss how you're going to move out of our lives permanently. Our lives. Not my daughter's life. Not my grandchildren's lives. His life." "Why?" Drew's voice was dripping with arrogance. "So we can all pretend the cleaning lady is part of the family? So we can waste more time on this ridiculous..." But before you find out just how spectacularly wrong Drew was about everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. And trust me, you don't want to miss a single second of Drew's world falling apart. To understand how I ended up in that lawyer's office, watching Drew's arrogance crumble, we need to go back 15 years. Back to when I was just a broken-hearted widow trying to piece my life back together. My husband had passed away suddenly, leaving me with nothing but a small life insurance policy and a 28-year-old daughter who was head over heels in love with the wrong man. Brooklyn had always been my everything. My sweet, caring girl who used to bring me dandelions and tell me I was the best mom in the world. But then Drew came along. I'll never forget the day she brought him home. He walked into my tiny apartment, looked around like he was inspecting a crime scene, and actually asked if I had anything better to serve than store-brand coffee. That should have been my first clue. But Brooklyn was glowing. She was so in love, so happy, and after everything we'd been through losing her father, I couldn't bear to dim that light. So when she asked what I thought about Drew, I just smiled and said, "If he makes you happy, sweetheart, then I'm happy." I should have spoken up. God, I should have spoken up. The wedding planning started immediately, and that's when I learned just how expensive Drew's idea of simple was. The venue alone cost more than I made in 6 months working as a housekeeper for the Harrison family. But I watched my daughter's face light up when she talked about her dream wedding, and I knew what I had to do. I emptied my savings account. Every penny I'd managed to put away since my husband's death. Gone. I picked up extra cleaning jobs, worked weekends, cleaned offices at night after spending all day at the Harrison mansion. My hands were raw, my back aches constantly, but I told myself it was worth it. This was my daughter's special day. Drew never said thank you, not once. Instead, he made little comments about how quaint it was that I was trying to contribute to their real wedding. He started calling me the maid. Not to my face at first, but I heard him. When Brooklyn laughed along, something inside me broke a little. After they got married, things got worse. Drew landed a job at a big real estate firm, and suddenly he was the expert on everything. He'd come to Sunday dinners at my apartment and make comments about my low-class furniture, my cheap groceries, and my simple way of life. He'd tell Brooklyn she was above this now and that she needed to aim higher. But I kept loving them. I kept showing up. When little Lane was born, I was there every day, helping with feedings, changing diapers, rocking him to sleep while Brooklyn recovered. When Danielle came along 2 years later, I practically moved in for a month. I was their built-in babysitter, their emergency contact, their free childcare. Drew never let me forget I was just the help. Meanwhile, my real job, the one that actually paid my bills, was at the Harrison mansion. Jordan Harrison was 78 years old, a self-made millionaire who'd built a shipping empire from nothing. His wife Chloe was 75, and she was the kindest soul I'd ever met. They'd been married for 52 years, and you could still see the love in their eyes when they looked at each other. But Chloe was getting forgetful. Little things at first, misplacing her keys, forgetting appointments. Then bigger things. Jordan was trying to handle it all himself, but he needed help. That's where I came in. I wasn't just cleaning their house anymore. I was reading to Chloe when she had her confused days, sitting with her when Jordan had business meetings, making sure she took her medications. Some evenings, I'd find her sitting by the window looking lost, and I'd sit beside her and tell her stories about my day until she remembered where she was. "You have such a gentle voice, dear," she'd tell me during her lucid moments. "It reminds me of my mother." Jordan watched all of this. He saw how I cared for his wife, how I treated her with dignity, even when she didn't remember my name. He saw how I stayed late without being asked, how I came in on weekends when Chloe was having particularly difficult days. But I thought I was just cleaning houses. I had no idea I was about to become part of the most important family story of my life. As Drew's career took off, his cruelty escalated. He was making serious money now, buying expensive cars, moving to a bigger house. Success made him meaner, more entitled. He started forbidding me from coming to their social events because I might embarrass them. He told Brooklyn I was holding her back with my working-class mentality. The worst part? Brooklyn started agreeing with him. "Mom, you need to know your place," she told me one day when I offered to help with Lane's school project. "Drew says it's not appropriate for you to be so involved." Know my place. My own daughter told me to know my place. Drew was poisoning my grandchildren against me too. I'd hear him telling Lane and Danielle that I was just the help, the same way he talked about me. When I'd try to hug them, they'd squirm away. When I'd offer to read to them, they'd say they were too busy. 8-year-old Lane started calling me Aubrey instead of Grandma because Drew said it was more professional. The financial manipulation was the cruelest part. When I needed help with medical bills after a minor surgery, Drew convinced Brooklyn that I was using them and taking advantage of their success. He actually said I was playing the victim to get money out of them. I wasn't asking for charity. I was asking my own daughter for help when I was struggling. But Drew made it sound like I was some kind of con artist. The final straw came at Drew's company Christmas party. He'd reluctantly invited me, because Brooklyn insisted, but he made sure I knew I didn't belong there. When his colleagues asked who I was, he introduced me as Brooklyn's mother. "She's a cleaning lady." Not "this is my mother-in-law." Not "this is Aubrey." Just "she's a cleaning lady." Then he got drunk and started telling everyone about how I was a charity case who needed their help to survive. He described my apartment as a hovel and my job as scrubbing toilets for rich people. He made jokes about how I couldn't even afford to dress properly for their party. I sat there, in the one nice dress I owned, watching my son-in-law humiliate me in front of a room full of strangers, while my own daughter said nothing. She just sat there, looking embarrassed. Not by Drew's behavior, but by me. That night, I went home to my small apartment and cried harder than I had since my husband's funeral. I pulled out old photo albums, pictures of Brooklyn as a little girl, and I wondered where I'd gone wrong. Where was the sweet child who used to tell me I was her hero? Where was the daughter who used to say she wanted to be just like me when she grew up? I realized that night that I'd lost her. Drew had won. He'd turned my own daughter against me, turned my grandchildren against me, and made me feel like I was nothing but a burden on their perfect life. But while my own family was pushing me away, another family was pulling me closer. The Harrisons needed me more than ever. Jordan had built his shipping empire from nothing, starting with a single boat and turning it into a fleet that moved cargo across the Great Lakes. He valued loyalty above everything else because he knew what it was like to be betrayed by people he trusted. He'd been watching how I cared for Chloe, how I treated her with respect and love, even as her condition worsened. Chloe had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and I became her primary caregiver. But it wasn't just a job anymore. I genuinely loved this woman. She told me stories about her childhood, about meeting Jordan at a dance in 1952, about their dreams of having children that never came true. During her lucid moments, she'd hold my hand and tell me I was the daughter she'd always wanted. Jordan saw all of this. He saw how I'd rush to Chloe's side when she was frightened, how I'd sing to her when she couldn't sleep, how I'd spend hours looking through photo albums with her to help her remember. He started treating me less like an employee and more like family. He'd share stories about building his business, about the people who'd helped him, and the people who'd tried to tear him down. He'd ask my opinion on things, seek my advice about Chloe's care. We'd have long conversations about life, about what really mattered, about the difference between people who take and people who give. Drew knew I worked for the Harrisons, but he had no idea how close we'd become. To him, I was still just the maid. He had no clue that Jordan was quietly documenting every act of kindness, every sacrifice, every moment of genuine love I showed his wife. He had no idea that Jordan was writing it all down. The night before Chloe passed away, she had one final lucid moment. She looked at me with clear eyes and said, "You're my real daughter, Aubrey. You're the child of my heart." Chloe passed away on a Tuesday. Jordan was never the same, but neither was I, because that's when everything changed. After Chloe passed away, Jordan became a different man. The grief hit him like a physical blow, and suddenly this strong, self-made millionaire who'd built an empire from nothing looked fragile, lost. He'd sit in his chair by the window where Chloe used to watch the birds, and he'd just stare out at nothing. My heart broke for him. This man who'd been married for 52 years was now completely alone, rattling around in that big house with nothing but memories and regret. So I stayed. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear to leave him like that. Jordan's health started declining rapidly. The doctor said it was his heart, but I knew better. It was heartbreak, pure and simple. He'd lost his will to fight. I became his sole companion, his caregiver, his connection to the world outside those mansion walls. During those long, quiet months, Jordan and I had the most intimate conversations of my life. He told me about his childhood, about being an orphan who'd aged out of the system with nothing but determination and a dream. He talked about meeting Chloe, about building his business one contract at a time, about the people who'd helped him and the people who'd tried to destroy him. "You know what I learned, Aubrey?" he said one evening as I was preparing his medication. "Blood doesn't make a family, love does, loyalty does. The way you cared for Chloe, the way you're caring for me now, that's what a real family looks like." I had no idea that Jordan was quietly meeting with lawyers during those months. While I was cooking his meals and managing his medications, he was making arrangements. Big arrangements. He'd have Jamie Peterson come to the house when I was running errands, and they'd disappear into his study for hours at a time. I thought they were just handling his business affairs. I was completely oblivious to what was really happening. Meanwhile, my real family was showing their true colors. Drew had started making casual comments about when the old man dies, always with this gleam in his eye, like he was already counting money that wasn't his. He'd ask me pointed questions about Jordan's health, about his business, about whether he had any family left. "Must be nice working for someone with all that money," he'd say with a smirk. "Too bad you're just the help, right? I bet he doesn't even remember you in his will." Brooklyn was even worse. She started pressuring me to find out about the Harrison money, like I was some kind of spy sent to gather intelligence. She'd call me every few days with the same questions. How much was Jordan worth? Did he have any heirs? What did he say about his estate planning? "Mom, you're in that house every day," she'd say, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Surely you overhear things. Surely you know something about his finances." I was torn apart by this. Part of me wanted to make my daughter happy, wanted to give her the information she was asking for. But a bigger part of me knew that what Jordan shared with me was private, sacred. He trusted me. He'd opened his heart to me about his loneliness, his grief, his fears about dying alone. I couldn't betray that trust. Not even for Brooklyn. I don't know anything about his finances, I'd tell her. And even if I did, it wouldn't be my place to share that information. This made Drew furious. Your place, he'd snarl, your place is to help your family when you have the chance. This could change everything for us, Aubrey. This could set Lane and Danielle up for life. But I stood firm. Jordan's privacy was more important than Drew's greed. During Jordan's final months, our conversations became even deeper. He talked about legacy, about what really mattered in life. He told me about all the people who'd tried to use him over the years, all the relatives who'd suddenly appeared when his business took off, all the fake friends who'd disappeared when times got tough. You know what's funny, Aubrey? He said one day as I was helping him with his physical therapy exercises. I spent my whole life building this fortune, and the only person who's ever cared about me, really cared about me, is someone who's never asked me for a single thing. That's when he made me promise something that changed everything. Promise me something, Aubrey. Promise me you'll never let anyone make you feel small again. Promise me you'll never let anyone treat you like you're worth less than you are. I didn't understand why he was being so intense about it, but I promised. How could I not? This man had become like a father to me, and he was asking for one simple promise. Jordan died on a Sunday morning. I was holding his hand when he passed, and his last words were, "Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." I cried for 3 days straight, not just because I'd lost someone I loved, but because I realized I was completely alone again. My biological family had written me off as nothing more than a source of information, and now the man who'd treated me like a daughter was gone. The funeral was Tuesday. It was small, quiet, dignified, exactly what Jordan would have wanted. I sat in the back, wearing my one black dress, watching as a few distant relatives and business associates paid their respects. Drew and Brooklyn didn't even come. They said they were too busy to attend the funeral of the man who'd employed me for over a decade. And by Friday, Drew was already making his move. That's when everything changed. Suddenly, Drew was calling me every day. Suddenly, he was inviting me to family dinners. Suddenly, he was being nice to me for the first time in 15 years. "Aubrey," he'd say with fake enthusiasm, "so good to see you. How are you holding up after your boss died?" I was confused. This was the same man who'd spent years telling me I was nothing but the help. And now he was treating me like I was his favorite person in the world. He'd ask about my day, compliment my cooking, even help me with my coat. It was so bizarre that I actually wondered if he'd hit his head. The truth became clear when the lawyer called. "Mrs. Aubrey," Jamie Peterson said over the phone, "I need you to come in for the reading of Jordan Harrison's will. You're named as a beneficiary." A beneficiary. I nearly dropped the phone. Jordan had left me something in his will. Probably a small thank you gift, maybe enough to help with my rent for a few months. I was touched that he'd thought of me at all. But when I told Brooklyn about the phone call, the change in her voice was immediate. "A beneficiary?" she practically screamed. "Mom, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for." Drew was even more excited. He started making plans immediately, talking about investments and real estate and business opportunities. He was already spending money that wasn't his, dividing up an inheritance he knew nothing about. "Think about it, Aubrey," he said during one of our suddenly frequent dinners. "You worked for that man for over a decade. You were there when he died. He probably left you a significant amount, maybe even enough to help all of us." That's when I realized what was happening. Drew wasn't being nice to me because he'd suddenly developed a conscience. He was being nice because he thought I was about to inherit money that he could get his hands on. The irony was almost funny. For years, he'd treated me like garbage, and now he was practically worshiping the ground I walked on because he thought I might be his ticket to easy money. Brooklyn was already planning how to spend the inheritance. She'd calculated that even a modest request from a millionaire could pay off their house, fund the kids' college educations, maybe even buy Drew that boat he'd been wanting. She was walking around with stars in her eyes, talking about finally getting what we deserve. Before I continue with what happened next, I need you to hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you is going to blow your mind. This story takes a turn that no one, and I mean no one, saw coming. The day of the will reading arrived, and Drew strutted into that law office like he owned the place. He'd bought a new suit for the occasion, slicked back his hair, and he had this confident swagger that made my stomach turn. He was so sure, so absolutely certain, that he'd figured out the perfect angle. "Don't worry, Aubrey," he'd whispered to me in the elevator. "Whatever you inherit, we'll make sure it's put to good use. Family takes care of family, right?" Family. After 15 years of treating me like dirt, he was suddenly talking about family. Brooklyn was practically vibrating with excitement. She'd already picked out paint colors for the kitchen renovation she was planning to fund with my inheritance. Lane and Danielle were there too, looking bored but dressed in their best clothes because Drew had told them this was an important family event. Jamie Peterson called everyone into the conference room, and that's when Drew's true colors really showed. He positioned himself at the head of the table like he was running the meeting, started making small talk with the lawyer about estate planning and investment strategies. "So," he said with that oily smile, "I assume we're looking at a pretty substantial bequest for Aubrey here." She was very dedicated to Mr. Harrison. The way he said dedicated made my skin crawl, like he was implying something inappropriate about my relationship with Jordan. That's when Drew stood up and delivered the speech that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Look, let's just cut to the chase here. Aubrey's a good woman, but she's not equipped to handle serious money. She's never had to make real financial decisions. So, whatever Mr. Harrison left her, I think we can all agree it should be managed by someone with actual business experience." He was talking about me like I wasn't even in the room, like I was a child who couldn't be trusted with her own inheritance. "Face it, Aubrey," he said, turning to me with that condescending smile. "You're just the help. This money goes to the real family." That's when Jamie Peterson opened the will, and Drew's world came crashing down. Jamie Peterson cleared his throat and began reading in that formal lawyer voice that makes everything sound official and final. "I, Jordan Harrison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave my entire estate, including all financial assets, real estate holdings, and business interests, valued at approximately $77 million, to Aubrey Mitchell, who has shown me what it means to be truly loved." The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that mahogany-paneled office. Drew's face went through about 5 different colors, from confident pink to confused white to angry red. His mouth fell open like a fish gasping for air, and I watched as the reality of what he'd just heard slowly sank in. "What?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "What did you just say?" $77 million. Jamie repeated, his voice steady, but I could see him fighting back that smile again. "The mansion on Lakeshore Drive, the shipping business, all investment portfolios, and various other assets." Drew shot up from his chair so fast it toppled backward. "That's impossible. That's absolutely impossible. She's just the maid." I sat there in complete shock. $77 million. I couldn't even wrap my mind around that number. I'd never seen that much money in my entire life. I'd never even imagined that much money existed outside of movies and fairy tales. "There has to be some mistake," Brooklyn said, her voice shaking. "Mom, did you know about this?" I shook my head, still too stunned to speak. I genuinely had no idea, not a clue. All those months of caring for Jordan, all those intimate conversations about life and family and what really mattered, never once had he mentioned anything about leaving me money. Nothing. Not a single hint. How is this possible? Drew was pacing now, his hands shaking with rage. "She's nobody. She's a cleaning lady. She doesn't deserve this money." That's when Jamie Peterson pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written on it in Jordan's careful handwriting. Mr. Harrison left a personal letter explaining his decision, Jamie said, handing me the envelope. He asked that it be read aloud during the will reading. My hands were trembling as I opened it. The letter was 3 pages long, written in Jordan's distinctive script, and as I began to read, my voice cracked with emotion. My dear Aubrey, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you're probably sitting in some lawyer's office, wondering how the hell an old man left you everything he owned. I had to stop for a moment. Even in death, Jordan's voice was so clear, so warm, so full of the gentle humor that had gotten me through those dark months after Chloe died. The truth is, you earned every penny of this inheritance, not through manipulation or flattery or false promises, but through something far more valuable. Genuine love. You showed me what a real family looks like. Loyalty isn't about blood, Aubrey. It's about love. It's about showing up when someone needs you, even when there's nothing in it for you. Drew was getting more agitated with every word. This is undue influence. She manipulated a sick old man. She seduced him. Let her finish, Jamie said firmly, and something in his tone made Drew sit down and shut up. I continued reading, tears streaming down my face. You took care of my Chloe, like she was your own family. You held her hand through her worst days. You sang to her when she was frightened. You treated her with dignity when she couldn't remember your name. You never asked for anything in return. You never hinted about money or inheritance, or what I might leave you when I died. The letter went on to detail every sacrifice I'd made, every kindness I'd shown, every moment of genuine care I'd given both him and Chloe. He'd been watching everything, documenting everything, seeing everything. But most importantly, Aubrey, you stayed with me when I was dying. You held my hand. You made sure I wasn't alone. You gave me the greatest gift anyone can give another person. You made me feel loved in my final moments. I was sobbing now, remembering those last days, those last conversations, the weight of Jordan's hand in mine as he took his final breath. I know there will be people who question this decision. People who think you don't deserve this money because you weren't born into my family. But you became my family, Aubrey. You chose to love us, and we chose to love you. That's worth more than any blood relation. Drew couldn't contain himself any longer. He started ranting about legal challenges, about undue influence, about how I'd obviously manipulated a vulnerable old man. But then Jamie Peterson held up his hand. There's more, he said quietly. Mr. Harrison included a specific clause about anyone who might challenge this will. He pulled out another document and began reading. Should anyone contest this will or make claims of undue influence, they should know that I have been of sound mind throughout this process. I have undergone psychological evaluations, cognitive tests, and have been deemed completely competent by 3 separate doctors. Drew's face was getting redder by the second. Furthermore, Jamie continued, I have been particularly observant of how certain family members have treated my beloved Aubrey over the years. I have witnessed firsthand the cruelty, dismissiveness, and outright emotional abuse she has endured from those who should have loved her most. Now Drew was starting to look nervous. I have documented instances of her son-in-law, Drew Mitchell, referring to her as the help, the maid, and charity case. I have witnessed him forbidding her from family events, manipulating her daughter against her, and teaching her grandchildren to treat her with disrespect. The room was dead silent, except for Drew's heavy breathing. Any person who has treated Aubrey with such cruelty, who has made her feel small or worthless or unwanted, has no claim to any portion of this inheritance. This money goes to someone who understands what love really means, not to someone who has spent years demonstrating what it looks like to be cruel. Drew's meltdown was spectacular. He started screaming about how unfair it all was, how I didn't deserve the money, how I was just a nobody who'd gotten lucky. He threatened to sue, to challenge the will, to prove that I'd somehow tricked Jordan into leaving me everything. She's been planning this for years, he shouted. She's been manipulating him, playing the victim, making him feel sorry for her. But Jamie Peterson just smiled and pulled out a thick folder. Mr. Harrison anticipated this reaction. He's included video testimony explaining his decision, medical records proving his competency, and detailed documentation of Mrs. Mitchell's character and service to his family. Then came the final blow. He also included surveillance footage from family gatherings where Mr. Mitchell publicly humiliated Mrs. Mitchell, audio recordings of phone conversations where Mr. Mitchell discussed when the old man dies, and witness testimony from multiple sources about Mr. Mitchell's treatment of his mother-in-law. Drew went completely white. All those years of treating me like garbage, all those cruel comments, all those moments when he thought no one was watching. Jordan had been paying attention to everything. Brooklyn was crying now, realizing that she'd chosen the wrong side. She'd let her husband turn her against her own mother, and now she was watching everything she'd dreamed of slip away. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But it was too late for apologies. The damage was done. For 15 years I'd been treated like I was nothing, like I didn't matter, like I was just a burden on their perfect life. And now, in the space of 10 minutes, everything has changed. Jordan's final words in the letter were the most powerful. "You gave me love when I needed it most, Aubrey. Now I'm giving you the freedom to never let anyone make you feel small again. Use this money wisely, but most importantly, use it to build the life you've always deserved." $77 million. A mansion. A shipping business. All of it mine. All of it earned through nothing more than genuine love and loyalty. Drew was still ranting when I stood up, folded the letter carefully, and looked him straight in the eye. "You know what, Drew?" I said, my voice steady and strong. "You're absolutely right about one thing. I am just the help. I'm just a cleaning lady from Detroit who spent her life taking care of other people." His face lit up with triumph, thinking I was finally admitting he was right. "But here's what you never understood," I continued. "Sometimes the help becomes family. Sometimes love matters more than blood. And sometimes, just sometimes, the people you treat like garbage turn out to be worth more than you ever imagined." The look on his face was priceless. Absolute, complete, devastating realization that he'd just lost everything because he'd spent 15 years being cruel to the wrong person. Jordan was right. I'd never let anyone make me feel small again. 3 months later, I'm sitting in the sunroom of the Harrison Mansion, my mansion now, watching the morning light dance across Lake Michigan. The irony isn't lost on me. The woman who used to scrub these floors now owns every square inch of this place. I've kept most of the house exactly as Jordan and Chloe left it. Their photos still sit on the mantel, their favorite books are still on the shelves, and Chloe's garden is blooming more beautifully than ever. This isn't just my home now. It's a tribute to the people who taught me what real love looks like. But I'm not hoarding this wealth like some dragon sitting on a pile of gold. I've started a foundation in Jordan and Chloe's name that helps elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. I've funded scholarships for kids who age out of foster care, just like Jordan did. I've donated to Alzheimer's research and hospice care programs. This money isn't just mine. It's a responsibility. Jordan trusted me with his legacy, and I'm going to honor that trust. Drew, on the other hand, has learned what happens when karma finally catches up with you. Remember all those audio recordings Jordan had made? Well, it turns out that when you're caught on tape talking about when the old man dies and making plans to spend someone else's inheritance, your business partners start asking uncomfortable questions. Drew's real estate firm dropped him within a week of the will reading. Apparently, discussing a client's death for financial gain doesn't look good on company letterhead. But that was just the beginning. The local news picked up the story. Greedy son-in-law loses $77 million fortune, and it went viral. The internet had a field day with Drew's arrogance, his cruelty, his complete shock at being outsmarted by just the help. The humiliation was swift and brutal. His business contacts dried up overnight. His social circle abandoned him. Even his golf buddies stopped returning his calls. Turns out, when you're known as the man who was cruel to his elderly mother-in-law, and lost a fortune because of it, people don't want to be associated with you. The final blow came when his mortgage company called in his loan. Without the income from his job, without the inheritance he'd been counting on, Drew couldn't make the payments on that fancy house he'd been so proud of. They lost everything: the house, the cars, the lifestyle he'd built his entire identity around. The same man who'd called me a charity case was now asking his former friends for loans. Brooklyn has tried to reconcile with me, and I can see the genuine remorse in her eyes. She calls every week, sometimes crying, sometimes just sitting in silence on the other end of the phone. She knows she made the wrong choice. She knows she let her husband turn her against her own mother. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said during one of our conversations. "I was so caught up in what Drew wanted, in fitting into his world, that I forgot who I really was. I forgot who raised me to be better than that." But here's the thing about boundaries: they're not walls meant to keep people out forever. They're gates that open when people prove they've changed. I've told Brooklyn that our relationship can be repaired, but it's going to take time. She needs to show me through her actions, not just her words, that she's remembered what love really means. She needs to prove that she's willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. The grandchildren have been the most surprising part of all this. Lane and Danielle have started coming to visit me at the mansion, and for the first time in years, they're seeing me as their grandmother instead of just the help. 8-year-old Lane asked me last week why his dad was so angry all the time now. I told him, sometimes when people make choices based on greed instead of love, they end up losing everything that really matters. 6-year-old Danielle has started calling me Grandma Aubrey again. She sits with me in Chloe's old chair and asks me to tell her stories about the nice old people who used to live in this house. I tell her about Jordan's business adventures and Chloe's beautiful garden, and she listens with the same wide-eyed wonder that her mother used to have. These children are learning something invaluable: that true worth isn't measured by what you own, but by how you treat other people. They're seeing what happens when you choose kindness over cruelty, loyalty over convenience, love over greed. I've had a lot of time to think these past 3 months, sitting in this beautiful house that I still can't quite believe is mine. I've thought about the choices that led me here, about the people who lifted me up, and the people who tried to tear me down. The truth is, I spent 70 years believing I wasn't enough. I thought I was just a simple woman who cleaned houses and raised a daughter and tried to do the right thing. I thought I was ordinary, forgettable, disposable. But Jordan saw something different. He saw a woman who chose love over resentment, loyalty over convenience, service over selfishness. He saw someone who treated his beloved wife with dignity in her final years, who stayed with him when he was dying, who never asked for anything in return. Turns out, I was more than enough. I was exactly what someone needed. That's the real lesson here, isn't it? We spend so much time letting other people define our worth, letting their cruelty make us feel small, letting their voices drown out our own inner knowledge of who we really are. But love sees what others miss. Real love recognizes true worth, even when it comes in the form of a 70-year-old housekeeper who's never owned anything more valuable than a 10-year-old Honda. I'm not sharing this story to brag about my good fortune or to seek revenge on people who hurt me. I'm sharing it because I want every person who's ever been made to feel small to know that your worth isn't determined by other people's treatment of you. You are not just anything. You are not disposable. You are not worthless. You are exactly what someone needs, even if they don't know it yet. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, then please hit that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like this, stories about real love triumphing over cruelty, about loyalty being rewarded, about the power of treating people with dignity, these are the stories that change lives.